Tonight from the Drowsy Scribe, the story of a man who saves a crane and then gets exactly what he wished for, which turns out to be way more complicated than he thought. You'll see why sometimes the best thing you can do for your marriage is to not ask questions. How a weaving side hustle can save you from poverty but ruin your life. And that when someone says, "Don't look in this room," they really genuinely mean it. And afterward, from the scribe's bestiary, the Kappa, a cucumber-obsessed river imp with a water-filled head bowl and truly alarming manners. I'm the Drowsy Scribe, and tonight's tale is Feather or Not, one of Japan's most beautiful and heartbreaking folktales, the Crane Wife, or Tsuru Nyobo. You might know a version of it already. The original is stranger, sadder, and better. It's a story about love, poverty, magic, and the catastrophic consequences of curiosity. Fair warning, this one's a tearjerker, so maybe have tissues ready if you're the crying type. Once upon a time, in a small village in Japan, there lived a poor man. And when I say poor, I mean the kind of poor where what's for dinner is a question with no good answer. Let's call him Yohei, because he needs a name, and the original tale just calls him a man, which feels a bit impersonal for someone whose life is about to get extremely weird. Yohei is a good person, you know the type. He works hard, he's kind to his neighbors, he doesn't complain about his situation, even though his situation is pretty complaint-worthy. He makes a living doing odd jobs around the village. A little farming here, some repairs there, whatever keeps rice in his bowl, which, lately, is not much. One winter evening, Yohei is walking home along a snowy path when he hears something. A sound that doesn't belong in the quiet winter landscape. A desperate, pained cry. He stops, looks around, and there in the snow he sees a crane. A beautiful white crane, elegant and long-necked. The kind of bird that looks like it was designed by someone who really understood aesthetics. Except this crane is in bad shape. Very bad shape. There's an arrow stuck in its wing, and it's struggling in the snow, and if Yohei doesn't do something, this bird is absolutely going to die out here. Now, Yohei could keep walking. He's got his own problems. He's hungry, he's cold, he's poor, and getting involved with an injured crane isn't going to put food on his table. But Yohei, as we've established, is a good person. So he approaches the crane slowly, talking to it in a soft voice, the way you do when you're trying to convince a wild animal that you're not going to make its day even worse. "Hey," he says, "I'm going to help you, okay? This is going to hurt, but then it's going to be better." The crane looks at him with one dark, intelligent eye. And here's the thing about this moment, and you should remember this because it's important. The crane understands. You can see it in the way it goes still, the way it stops struggling. It knows what Yohei is about to do. Yohei carefully removes the arrow. The crane cries out, which, pulling an arrow out of any living thing is going to produce that reaction. But then Yohei tears a strip from his own robe, his already not great robe, and wraps the wound as best he can. He's not a doctor, he's not a veterinarian, he's just a guy doing his best with exactly zero medical training. "There," he says, "you should be okay now. Fly home, get warm, and maybe avoid hunters." The crane regards him for a long moment with those dark, knowing eyes. Then it bows its head to him, and if you don't think a bird can bow in a way that conveys deep gratitude and respect, you've never watched a crane. It spreads its wings, and despite the injury, despite everything, it takes off into the winter sky. Yohei watches it go, feels good about his one good deed for the day, and trudges home to his empty house and his empty rice pot. That night, there's a knock at his door. Yohei opens it, and there's a woman standing in the snow. A young woman, beautiful in that way that makes you stop mid-sentence and forget what you were saying. She's wearing a simple robe, she's somehow not shivering despite the cold, and she's looking at Yohei with dark, intelligent eyes that seem familiar in a way he can't quite place. "I'm sorry to bother you," she says, and her voice is soft and a little musical. "I'm traveling and I'm lost, and I saw your light. Could I possibly stay here tonight? Just until morning. I'll leave as soon as it's light." Now, here's where Yohei should probably ask some follow-up questions. Like, where are you traveling from? Or, where are you going? Or, how are you not freezing to death in that thin robe? But Yohei, as we've established multiple times now, is a good person. Also, he's not great at saying no to people, or mysterious, beautiful women who appear at his door during snowstorms specifically. "Of course," he says, stepping aside. "Please, come in. It's not much, but it's warm." She comes inside, and immediately Yohei's tiny, poor house feels different, less empty, less lonely. She sits by his meager fire and they talk, and here's the surprising thing. She's easy to talk to. Funny, kind, interested in his boring life and his boring stories. They talk through the night, and by morning, Yohei realizes two things. One, he doesn't want her to leave, and two, he's in absolutely no position to ask her to stay. But before he can figure out how to navigate this social situation, she says, "Could I stay longer?" "Here?" Yohei asks, because his brain has momentarily stopped working. "Yes, here, with you." She pauses and then adds, "I could be your wife if you'd like." And look, this is extremely fast. This is "we just met 12 hours ago" fast. This is "I don't even know your name" fast. But Yohei, who has been alone for so long, who has been poor and lonely and working himself to the bone with nothing to show for it, looks at this woman who is kind and beautiful and who actually wants to stay with him, and he says the only thing he can say. Yes, yes, I would like that very much. Her name is Tsuru, she tells him, which, if you speak Japanese, you might recognize as the word for crane. And if you were Yohei, you might think that was a funny coincidence. But Yohei doesn't speak Japanese because he's in Japan, speaking Japanese, where it's just a normal name, so he doesn't put it together, which, spoiler, is going to be important later. So Tsuru and Yohei get married in a small ceremony because Yohei can't afford a big one, and also because they've known each other for approximately 24 hours, and a big ceremony might raise questions. And at first, everything is wonderful. Tsuru is kind, she's patient with Yohei's poverty, she makes their little house feel like a home. But here's the problem that hasn't gone away. They're still poor. Like, really poor. Painfully poor. We need to talk about where our next meal is coming from poor. One day, about a week into their marriage, Tsuru says to Yohei, "I want to help. I want to contribute." "You don't have to," Yohei says, because he's already feeling bad enough about bringing a wife into his poverty situation. "I want to," she insists. "I can weave. If you can get me a loom and some thread, I can weave cloth that we can sell." Yohei doesn't have money for a loom, but he borrows one from a neighbor, because apparently borrowing things is easier than buying them, which tracks. He sets it up in their small back room, gets some thread, and Tsuru seems pleased. "Thank you," she says. "Now, I need you to promise me something." "Anything," Yohei says, which is what you say when you're still in the honeymoon phase of a relationship. "When I'm weaving, you cannot look into the room. You cannot open the door. You cannot peek through cracks. You cannot check on me. No matter what you hear, no matter how long it takes, you must not look. Do you promise?" And okay, this is weird. This is obviously weird. This is, I'm definitely hiding something weird. If your spouse of 1 week says, "Don't look in this room," that's when you start asking questions. But Yohei, who is apparently committed to not asking any questions ever, just nods. "I promise," he says. Tsuru smiles, goes into the room and closes the door. For 3 days, Yohei doesn't see her. The door stays closed. Sometimes he hears the loom working, the rhythmic thump and click of weaving. Sometimes he hears other sounds, sounds he can't quite identify. But he keeps his promise. He doesn't look. On the morning of the fourth day, Tsuru emerges. She looks exhausted, pale, thinner somehow, as if the weaving has physically drained her. But she's smiling, and in her arms is a bolt of cloth. Except, cloth doesn't really cover it. This fabric is incredible. It's like nothing Yohei has ever seen. It shimmers in the light. It's softer than anything he's ever touched. It's decorated with patterns that seem to move and shift when you look at them. It's the kind of cloth that emperors wear. The kind of cloth that ends up in museums. This is amazing, Yohei breathes. Take it to the market, Tsuru says. Sell it for as much as you can. Yohei takes it to the market, and the merchant he shows it to literally gasps. Where did you get this? My wife made it, Yohei says, with probably too much pride. The merchant examines it, holds it up to the light, runs it through his fingers. I'll give you, he says, and names a price that is more money than Yohei has seen in his entire life. More money than he thought existed in the world, honestly. Yohei takes the money home, and when he shows Tsuru, he's crying. We're not poor anymore, he says. We can eat, we can fix the house, we can live. Tsuru smiles, but she still looks tired. I'm glad, she says. For a while, things are good. Things are really good. They're not rich, but they're comfortable. They have food. They have fuel for the fire. They can afford to fix the roof when it leaks. Yohei is happier than he's ever been. But here's the thing about humans, and you already know this, because you're human and you've met other humans. We're never quite satisfied. We always want a little more. Not because we're bad necessarily, but because once you're not worried about starving, you start thinking about other things. Months pass, and the money from the cloth starts to run low. Not dangerously low, not we're going to starve low, but low enough that Yohei starts thinking about the future, about security, about having enough saved up that they never have to worry again. So one day he approaches Tsuru. Could you weave another cloth? She looks at him for a long moment. It's difficult, she says. It takes a lot out of me. I know, Yohei says, and I wouldn't ask if it wasn't important. But if we could sell one more, we'd have enough money to really be secure, to never worry again. Tsuru is quiet. Then she nods. All right, one more, but the same rules apply. You cannot look. I won't, Yohei promises. She goes into the room and closes the door. This time, it's 5 days. 5 days of hearing the loom, of hearing those strange sounds that Yohei can't identify. 5 days of Tsuru not eating, not drinking, not emerging even once. And Yohei is starting to worry, because 5 days is a long time to go without food or water. And what if something's wrong? But he promised, so he doesn't look. When Tsuru finally emerges, she looks terrible, worse than before. Pale, thin, exhausted to the point where she can barely stand. But the cloth she's carrying is somehow even more beautiful than the first. It practically glows. Looking at it makes Yohei's chest ache with a feeling he can't name. Tsuru, he says, are you okay? I'm fine, she says, but she's clearly not fine. Take this to the market. But Yohei, this is the last one. I can't do this again. Okay, Yohei says quickly. Yes, okay, this is the last one. He takes it to the same merchant, and the merchant offers him even more money than before. Enough money that Yohei and Tsuru could live comfortably for years. Maybe forever, if they're careful. Yohei goes home with the money, and for a while, things are good again. Tsuru slowly recovers. Color returns to her face. She gains back the weight she lost. She smiles again. They're happy. But then the village headman comes to visit. Yohei, the headman says, I've heard about the cloth your wife weaves. She's not weaving anymore. Yohei says quickly. Ah, but you see, the Lord has heard about it too, and he wants a cloth for himself, a special commission. He's willing to pay extremely well, and he names a sum that is frankly ridiculous, the kind of money that would set them up for life, multiple lives. Yohei should say no. He promised Tsuru this was the last one. But the money, the security, and surely just one more time would be okay, right? One more, and then never again. He tells the headman he'll ask his wife. That night, he talks to Tsuru. The Lord wants to commission a cloth. Tsuru's face goes very still. I said I couldn't do this again. I know, but this is for the Lord. And the money, Tsuru, it's enough that we'd never have to worry about anything ever again. One more time, just one more. It's never just one more, Tsuru says quietly. It will be, Yohei insists. I promise. Tsuru looks at him with those dark, intelligent eyes, and something in her expression makes Yohei's stomach twist. But finally, she nods. All right, one more. But Yohei, you must not look. It's more important than ever that you don't look. I won't, Yohei says. She goes into the room. This time it's 7 days. 7 days of the loom working, of those strange sounds, of Tsuru not emerging. And Yohei is climbing the walls with worry, because 7 days without food or water, that's not survivable. What if she's dying in there? What if something's terribly wrong? But also, and he's ashamed to admit this, but it's there, he's curious. Desperately curious. What is she doing in there? How is she making cloth that beautiful? What are those sounds? On the 6th day, Yohei's curiosity wins. He tells himself he's just checking on her, making sure she's okay. That's reasonable, right? That's the action of a concerned husband. He's just going to peek through the door, just for a second, just to make sure she's alive. He approaches the door to the back room. His heart is pounding. His hands are shaking. He knows he shouldn't do this. He promised he wouldn't do this, but he can't help himself. He slides the door open just a crack and looks inside. There is no woman at the loom. There is a crane. A white crane, beautiful and elegant, sitting at the loom. And as Yohei watches, frozen in horror and understanding, the crane reaches up with its beak and plucks a feather from its own body. The crane shudders with pain, and then weaves the feather into the cloth. Then it plucks another feather, and another. The cloth on the loom is made of feathers, crane feathers, and the crane is getting balder and more ragged with each one it pulls. The crane that Yohei saved in the snow. The crane with the dark, intelligent eyes. Tsuru. The crane suddenly stops weaving. Slowly it turns and looks directly at Yohei, and in its eyes he sees everything. Recognition, sorrow, disappointment, and worst of all, love. Still love, even now, even as he's broken everything. Yohei stumbles backward. He's shaking. He can't breathe. He closes the door and backs away, and his mind is racing, trying to process what he just saw, trying to understand, trying to make this make sense. A few hours later, Tsuru emerges from the room. She's back in her human form, and she's carrying the finished cloth. But she won't look at Yohei. She sets the cloth down carefully on the table. Tsuru, Yohei says, and his voice is shaking. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I didn't mean to. You looked, she says quietly. I was worried about you. You promised you wouldn't look. She finally meets his eyes, and he sees tears on her face. I'm the crane you saved. I took human form to repay your kindness, and I fell in love with you. The cloth is made from my feathers, from my body. That's why it's so beautiful, and that's why it costs me so much to make it. I didn't know, Yohei says desperately. If I had known, I couldn't tell you, Tsuru says. That was the condition. You couldn't know what I was. But now you've seen, and now I can't stay. What? No. Tsuru, please. Those are the rules, she says, and she sounds tired, so tired. You've seen my true form. I can't remain in the human world anymore. I have to go. Then I'll come with you, Yohei says. You can't. You're human. You belong here. She picks up the cloth and hands it to him. Give this to the Lord. It's finished. It's the best one I've made. Yohei takes it, but he's crying now. I don't care about the cloth. I don't care about the money. I just want you to stay. I want to stay too, Tsuru says, and her voice breaks. I loved being human. I loved being your wife. I loved you. But I can't stay where I'm known for what I really am. That's not how the magic works. She walks to the door, and Yohei follows her, still pleading, still apologizing. But Tsuru steps outside into the evening air, and as Yohei watches, she transforms. Her body shifts and changes, feathers replacing skin, arms becoming wings. In moments, there's no woman standing in his yard, just a crane. A white crane, more ragged than before, with patches where feathers are missing. The crane looks at Yohei one more time. Then it spreads its wings and takes off into the sky. Yohei runs after it, shouting her name, but she doesn't look back. He watches until she's just a white speck against the clouds, and then until he can't see her at all. She never comes back. Yohei keeps the cloth, but he never sells it. He can't bear to. It sits in his house, this impossibly beautiful thing that cost him everything. The village gets rich off the story. People come from all over to hear about the man whose wife was a crane. But Yohei stays poor, stays alone, and spends the rest of his life watching the sky, hoping to catch a glimpse of white wings. Hoping, even though he knows better, that maybe she'll come back. She doesn't. So that's the story of the crane wife, or Tsuru Nyobo. There are different versions throughout Japan. Sometimes it's the man's mother who looks. Sometimes the crane wife leaves because she completes 3 cloths, and that was the agreement. Sometimes she's captured by the man, rather than choosing to stay. But this version, where curiosity and broken promises drive her away, is the most common, and the most heartbreaking. It's a story about a lot of things. About the cost of kindness being repaid, how Tsuru literally gave pieces of herself to help Yohei. About the impossible conditions of transformation stories, how being known for what you truly are can mean you can't stay in the world you've chosen. About how love isn't always enough when you can't respect boundaries. About greed, sure, but also about human nature, how we always want a little more, push a little harder, look when we're told not to look. And about how sometimes the worst thing you can do is get exactly what you wished for at the beginning. Yohei wanted not to be alone and poor. He got a wife, he got wealth, and then his curiosity took both away. The story comes from the Edo period, though the tale itself is probably much older. It's related to a whole category of Japanese stories about crane wives, fox wives, and other supernatural beings who take human form for love. They almost always end badly. Apparently the lesson that, don't look in the forbidden room, never seems to stick with anyone in folklore, which honestly tracks with human behavior in general. We're really bad at not looking at things we've been explicitly told not to look at. It might be good to just be a little better at respecting people's boundaries, and maybe not asking your spouse to literally tear pieces of themselves away for your financial security. That seems like a good baseline. So, speaking of Japanese folklore creatures you definitely want to know about before you visit any rivers in Japan, let's talk about the Kappa. The Kappa is a river imp, and when I say imp, I mean a creature that is part turtle, part humanoid, part whatever nightmare you had that one time after eating bad sushi. They're about the size of a child, they're covered in green scales or skin, they have webbed hands and feet, and they have a turtle shell on their back. Oh, and, this is important, they have a bowl-shaped depression on top of their head that holds water. That water is the source of their power. If it spills out, the Kappa becomes weak and might even die. So basically, if you ever meet a Kappa, your strategy is to get it to bow to you, because Kappas are weirdly polite and will bow back, which will spill their headwater. Then you've won. You've defeated a Kappa through weaponized politeness. Kappas live in rivers, lakes, and ponds throughout Japan, and they're known for several things. 1. They love cucumbers. Obsessed with cucumbers. This is why sushi rolls with cucumber are called kappamaki, cucumber rolls. It's literally named after the cucumber-obsessed river imp. 2. They're really good at sumo wrestling. 3. And this is where things get darker, they like to pull people, especially children, into the water and drown them. Specifically, Kappas are after your shirikodama, which is a mythical ball that supposedly exists inside your anus. Yes, you read that right. The Kappa's preferred method of attack is to pull you underwater and extract this ball through your butt. How? By reaching up there, apparently. Japanese folklore doesn't shy away from the uncomfortable details. In older stories, Kappas were seriously dangerous. Villages would post warning signs near rivers known to have Kappas. Parents would tell their children to stay away from the water, or the Kappa would get them. It was basically the Japanese equivalent of "don't talk to strangers," except the stranger is a turtle child who wants your butt ball. But Kappas aren't all bad. As I mentioned, they're obsessed with politeness and keeping promises. If you save a Kappa's life, say by refilling their head bowl when it's spilled, they'll be in your debt forever. There are stories of Kappas who taught humans medicine, who helped with farm work, who protected villages from floods. Once you're on a Kappa's good side, they're fiercely loyal. There's a famous story about a samurai who wrestled a Kappa and won. The Kappa promised never to harm anyone in the samurai's village again, and even taught the samurai how to set broken bones. To this day, there's supposedly a certificate of this promise kept in a temple in Fukuoka, signed with the Kappa's webbed handprint. Kappas also have some weird weaknesses beyond the whole headwater thing. They hate metal, they dislike ginger, and they're terrible at understanding modern technology, which seems like it would really limit their effectiveness in contemporary Japan. Sorry, can't drown you, trying to figure out this vending machine. Oh, and they smell. Really bad. Like fish and rotting plants and swamp water all mixed together. So if you're near a river in Japan and you suddenly smell something truly terrible, it's either a Kappa or some really unfortunate sewage situation. Probably best to assume Kappa and leave. The best part about Kappas, though, is that they're still part of modern Japanese culture. There are Kappa statues all over Japan, particularly in towns near rivers. There are Kappa festivals, Kappa mascots, Kappa candy. The city of Tono in Iwate Prefecture has a whole Kappa legend associated with it and makes it a major tourist thing. There's even a Kappa-themed beer. So if you ever visit Japan and you're near a river, maybe bring some cucumbers. Make sure you can bow quickly if needed, and whatever you do, protect your shirikodama. Nobody wants to explain that injury to their doctor. That's the tale for tonight. If it kept you company, or at least taught you to be polite to river imps, a like and a subscribe helps other folklore lovers find the Scribe's Corner. And if there's a myth or legend you'd like told, from anywhere in the world, leave it in the comments. I read them all. Until next time, mind the forbidden rooms. The Drowsy Scribe, signing off.